Good afternoon, everyone. Please settle down. Those at the back, please. Those at the back, please. Please begin to settle down. We will now begin the open grand final of this year's ICU Tournament 31, 2024. I'm Luigi from the HSAM. I'm just going to make an announcement to announce the teams that will be participating in this final. On the government side, we have Team Naomi Has No Riz. And the opposition, we have the team The Worst Motion is the Philosopher King. I'll introduce the panel and the chair of the grand final. On the panel includes Bea Quizon, Adar Goldberg, Michael Pansensoy, Tenku Omar, Umar Fazlan, and Young Park. And last but not the least, chairing the grand final is going to be David Aka. The motion for the grand final reads, the info slide is, the blue pill gives you a false memory of the best week of your life without really experiencing it. The red pill gives you the best week of your life, but you'll forget it all after. And the finals motion reads, this house would take the blue pill rather than the red pill. Without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor over to David to commence the final.
Okay, good. No. Hi everyone, welcome to the grand final. I'm David, I'll be your chair for today. You heard those introductions, so let's get this round underway. Debating on the motion, this house would take the blue pill rather than the red pill. We call him Prime Minister. Here he is.
Hi. I guess that if I'm here, I can be seated. Let's move the trophies away. Okay, I think this is a position where everyone in the room can see me, everyone can hear me. Is this alright? Okay, before I start my speech, just a few quick shout-outs. I'd like to shout out my partner for always being supportive. I'd like to shout out my family and friends for generously being nice to me, and US Debate especially for their kindness in accepting me. I'd also like to shout out the Japanese embassy for rejecting Naomi's visa. Without them, I will not be here today. Alright. Okay, I'd also like to clarify, if everyone's okay with it, can we please call the red pill and blue pill the forget pill and the remember pill? Just for the sake of clarity. Okay? Alright. Go. The problem with being a human being is you have no idea what makes you happy. You are always chasing it, but never taking it. The reality is, only proposition can give you the certainty you deserve. Only proposition can make you truly happy in life, and that's why we will clear this finals. Before I get into my argumentation, I'm just going to clarify a few things that I think are crucial for the round. The first of which is that what this pill will actually do, whether you eat it or you forget it. So assuming you take the remember pill, we think that this is the happiest memory of your life that you're experiencing. So if the happiest memory of my life were winning the lottery, that would essentially be what I remember. But very few people actually win the lottery, right? So it's not the happiest memory of someone else's life, it is yours. So what this means then is it is essentially a vision, a prophetic vision of what is going to be your happiest memory that you currently get immediately downloaded straight into your brain, and you just remember that. The forget pill is, assuming you take it, will take the happiest memory later in your life and essentially move it forward. If your happiest memory later on would be you spending a week in the Bahamas, you take that, move it forward, you go and spend that week in the Bahamas somehow, the universe contorts around that, and then that all goes away. I think that's a pretty decent way to frame the debate as to what these two pills do. You take it genuinely knowing what these pills do, because in order to have a debate, you need to pick between the pills, and if not, you just, oh, these pills are pretty, but I don't want to take a random pill. So you probably need to know what these pills do as a result. I'm going to make a simple two arguments. The first of which is that knowing the happiest memory of your life immediately gives you access to what makes you happy, and that's the most valuable possible thing you can get as a human being. The second of which is genuinely that this memory makes you happier. No, thank you. First then, on why this genuinely lets you know what makes you happy. The premise of this argument is that in the status quo, people go through life having absolutely no idea what makes them happy, right? We follow common societal narratives that tell you that getting lots of money and getting rich will make you happy. We follow what our parents think will make you happy, which often is what makes them happy, but we're fundamentally different from every single one of our parents. We follow our peers. We look at Instagram and go, that fella drinking all that alcohol at the club seems really happy in the moment. If I do that, surely that'll make me happy. We go through all of these things thinking that this is the key to happiness and the key to changing our lives. The problem here is couplefold. The first of which, thank you, is that there are a lot of possible things that will make you happy, all of which require a massive amount of investment. Getting a family might make you really, really happy, but that requires a massive amount of investment in that. Getting an amazing career progression might make you happy, but that requires a lot of time and effort. Reaching the pinnacle of any given happiness is incredibly difficult and incredibly hard. What this means then is that we either A, take lifetimes to find out what makes us happy. The intuitive illustration of this is how oftentimes people, as salarymen especially, in their deathbed say, God, I should have spent more time with my kids. This is the most common regret that individuals report when they're 60. Individuals don't realize that, well, maybe this thing could have made me happy. Maybe going and debating might make me happy. The problem here is the amount of time it takes to get there, by which time you have no more time to actually be happy. The second problem here is you never know that this is the thing that would make you happy. Let's say I feel really happy after winning this tournament. Is that the happiest thing that possibly happened to me? No, thank you. Like, the reality is that at any point of happiness, there's always a possible future peak of that, meaning that I can never be certain of that. What that means then is I never know what actually makes me happy as an individual human being. The thing that defines me as a person, the thing that would bring me a better, more enjoyable life is always out of my grasp on the opposition bench. As a result, we often feel like we're broken. We often feel like we waste time chasing things that should make us happy, but don't. We feel bad about ourselves for not feeling happy, even though we seem very lucky for getting this job. We seem very lucky for having this family, but why isn't it making me happy? These are existential problems that every single human being faces. What does taking the pill do?
So there's nothing in the info slide that says this memory or experience would exist in the counterfactual. It could be just a trip to an alien civilization.
But the happiest memory, the happiest memory of your life, right, isn't the trip to alien civilization, surely, right? Like, you don't invent another, you don't sit down, experience ultra joy for a week from someone else's life. It's your life, like, what the hell? Anyway, back to my argument. So, what this means then is that we know that this makes you happy, and that this is the thing that will really fulfill you. We can easily infer and extract what you experienced this week. If it turns out that spending that 1 week with your family baking makes you happy, God, that means that you now know what to work towards. You now know that you want to have a family. You should spend less time at work. If getting your boss to praise you and give you head pats is what makes you really happy, you should spend more time in the office. That's perfectly fine. All of these are legitimate sources of happiness that individuals cannot tell will make them happy because it takes so much time to get there, and by the time you're there, you're no longer able to access that happiness. What that means then is when we take this pill, we immediately know what to work towards. We solve this problem and we have that certainty, and we have a significantly happier life after that when we work towards these things. Will we ever be the pinnacle of our corporate ladder? No, of course not. We never need to defend our own God. But we are now doing the thing that makes you happiest. And God, if that's not a benefit, I don't know what is. The second argument then is that the memory itself is a source of happiness for you. Why is this the case? Oftentimes, life is dissatisfying, right? At every moment, you might be feeling suffering and you might just be feeling boredom. What this means then is that happiness comes from the recollection of memories that you've had in the past. Often, we human beings find it extremely difficult to live in the present. You gain joy from ruminating on the best meals you've had, the best trips you've had, the happiest memories you've got. What this means then is we instantly give you this ability from the very start. In the future, you can think upon this memory and reflect on why it makes you happy. How does this compare to the experience that they get, which apparently is the best experience of your life? The best experience of your life is worth nothing if you don't remember it. The reason behind this is You only value things because you feel like you have a memory of it, that it defines you in the future and makes you and can derive joy from ruminating upon it. What happens in their world is that even though the experience happens in the real world, you don't get any joy from it. And the simple parallel here is being horribly drunk. Is even if you are extremely high off your mind and experience this amazing pleasure sensations that I will not discuss in the final speech, and you don't remember any of it, it's worth nothing to you because you just don't remember it. You don't feel like it's you who did it. If I told you that actually you had an amazing week last week, you don't remember it, it's worth nothing. What government bench does for this debate is very simple. We prove to you that you will be happy now and will be happy later, and that this makes you the happiest forever. Propose.
We thank the Prime Minister for their speech. We now call on the Leader of Opposition to continue this debate. Hear, hear.
Hello, testing.
The biggest problem with this Gov team is that imagine a world that we are all able to create this kind of face illusion to begin with, right? Obviously, I want to win the lottery. Obviously, I want to win, for instance, WDC, right? It can happen when I actually take the pill that Gov offers me, but it cannot reassure that I can constantly get the kind of happiness at their side of the house, right? I think all of their arguments in terms of how it is time-consuming for you to actually pursue certain kind of happiness cannot make sure that you can actually reproduce a certain kind of memory and then take the pill coming from the Gov. That actually diminishes all the kind of impact that they talk about. I'm going to talk about three things in this speech. Firstly, I'm going to talk about why, for instance, the actual experiences you have, even if you forget later, is going to be much more important than the memory that you have at their side house. Secondly, I'm going to talk about why at their side house, these memories is going to kill a lot of the future experiences that you have. Lastly, I'm going to talk about why people generally care about reality more. So, firstly, why do we think that the actual experiences we have is generally much better than the memory they have, right? Number one, we think that memory oftentimes have a diminishing return, which means that when you talk to other individuals constantly about this kind of experiences, right? For instance, it looks like you want to tell everyone about this, but the time when you tell them one by one and time by time, that means that they're a diminishing return when you feel quite repetitive. We are doing the same thing again and again, right? Secondly, I think that oftentimes memory themselves are oftentimes less sensationally, right? It oftentimes just a one way that exists in your memory versus the experience that you have, right? For instance, the way that you see certain things, the way that you hear certain things, right? The way the actual scenery that gives you a very deep feeling in terms of how you feel and how you actually experience, right? But thirdly, I think that oftentimes the happiness we have existing in the experiences oftentimes lies in a kind of like uncertainty to begin with, right? For instance, that the memory of meeting someone you love, you don't know what kind of like things she will react when you do certain things. Exactly the moment that you feel the happiness, because you are actually guessing what she actually wants and why she do certain things, right? This kind of guessing is actually adding a huge amount of like gravity in terms of your experience, because it actually make you experience this kind of experience. Versus at their side house, when it's like a movie that they know the kind of like the end scene of the movie. I think oftentimes ruin the kind of like interest when you actually watch that at the end of the day. And this kind of, we think that the way in terms of which side of the house gives you more happiness, we think that the actual experiences at our side of the house generally give you more utility than the memory, right? The second thing to note here is why do we think that it will actually kill the future experiences you have, right? I think that there are many small happiness inside our life. For instance, the feeling of love, right? For instance, when you actually experience your first kiss. For instance, like traveling to Japan, enjoying the food there. It looks like, for instance, getting the support from your family, know that they support you on a daily basis. It looks like, for instance, the sunlight that you enjoy when you actually woke up. It looks like, for instance, the coffee that you drink, that you drink actually give you certain kind of like comfort to begin with, right? I think that with the moment that you actually have the so-called best memory restored in your life, exactly the moment that you're going to trivialize happiness, enjoy on a daily basis, right? The reason for that is because you constantly compare the happiness you have with the kind of like the best memory you have in your life, right?
Right.
I think there are several things to note here, right? Number one, we think that it's extremely important for you to actually experience this kind of like small happiness because one, there are oftentimes a real feeling that do give you the happiness, but two, oftentimes they offer you as a coping mechanism. For instance, like I feel too stressed standing here, but a cup of coffee can actually serve as a coping mechanism when I do feel that it's something that I love, right? I think extremely detrimental when you actually experience the best have the kind of best memory deep inside you. When you, for instance, constantly have to compare these memories, we constantly know that there is a peak that you can never reach at the end of the day, right? You have to constantly compare, and you know that it is not going to be achieved at your side. What's the point?
So given that you changed your behavior after taking this pill, this was probably the best memory of your life that you would have had if you hadn't taken this pill. But even if you don't buy that framing, you can get really close to the absolute best, right? Like people usually don't have like one big happy memory and like terrible memories afterwards. It's always really close things.
So I think the problem with your side is still like people change their behavior, but like this info site doesn't talk about what kind of like the illusion that you're going to have, which means that it's not necessarily going to be the sort of guidebook that's going to make you change that anyway, right? So we think that they say that probably it means a lot for instance we are seeking for the happiness. It's probably going to be time consuming. There's kind of possibility of the failure, etc., right? We say that exactly because of those kind of uncertainty, it actually enables us to enable us to further experience like greater degree of happiness in a way that, for instance, failing to break in a lot of tournaments make you more happier when you actually know that you break the 11 tournaments at the end of the day, right? The final achievement of certain kind of happiness is quite contingent on your failure, right? It's contingent on, for instance, the failure for you to actually find the happiness, the possibility that you know you fail, add more gravity when you actually achieve the happiness at the end of the day, right? That's the kind of like the small happiness that we can have at our side house and it would massively trivialize at their side house, right? But secondly, I think that it's going to kill the future experiences in a way that oftentimes when you have the false best memory in your life, it's going to leave you a lot of the loneliness, right? For instance, traveling to Japan and knowing that I have to go back to my school, finish a lot of the burdensome schoolwork, make me feel like a lot of loneliness and dissatisfaction when I know that when I was lying on my bed, right? But it is the same we consider about this, right? When you remember the kind of like the false best memory inside you, we're constantly knowing the fact that you cannot experience it again. We're lying on your bed, knowing the fact that you can never achieve this again. It is the end of your whole life's experiences in a way that you cannot achieve this again. It oftentimes kills a kind of a feeling and make you feel quite loneliness, right? Lastly, I want to talk about the reality, right? I think people just have a kind of preference over the reality, right? For instance, think about the thought experiments in a way that, for instance, no one actually wants to be trapped in a kind of like machine if they know that all the kind of like the memory that's going to be falsified, and oftentimes people still prefer to live in the reality instead of being indulged in that machine to begin with, right? It looks like, for instance, harmless assault, even if you know there's probably going to be no practical impact, you still know the fact that you feel quite bad about this because you know that in principle it's assault to begin with. Right? People generally have a revealed preference over the truth, and that's the reason why we do it.
We thank the Leader of Opposition for their speech. We now call on the Deputy Prime Minister. Hear, hear.
Hello, testing. Is it okay if I speak at this podium?
favourite memories from debating was back in 2017 when Yalpin and I did a small poem tournament in Singapore, and he told me to take off my shoes when I speak to help me feel less nervous. If you took a peek at my feet just now, I'm actually not wearing shoes right now. I often find myself experiencing an existential crisis when it comes to this activity. I ask myself questions like, why am I spending the weekend here? Why am I in an auditorium shouting about things that I don't know anything about to a room of strangers? And what helps me find meaning in this often meaningless world is remembering how happy 16-year-old Kevin was when he finally managed to hit 7 minutes on a debate speech. Even if you told me now that all of these memories were fake, it would not matter to me, and it would matter even less to the millions of people that only have memories of tragedy and heartbreak in their life. At least in their personal narrative of their life, we're able to insert 1 week of bliss where they can constantly reflect upon. The first question I want to ask is, will you know it's fake? Firstly, we have thousands of memories right now, and it's not clear that you'll be able to clearly identify that this is a fake memory. So, a lot of their arguments about the people having a preference for reality does not apply because that presupposes that the person knows that this memory is false. But if you have so many memories, it's not clear that you'll be able to identify this one as the fake one. But the second thing is that human beings can compartmentalize, we can be delusional, we can choose to ignore the fact that this did not actually happen. But most of all, it matters not that the memory is fake, because all of memory is fictional anyways. We do not have perfect memory, our brains are not video recorders, we often fill in the gaps of our memory with fictional and dramatized elements, and that is fine. The reason is because our memories are not evidence used in a criminal investigation, they are part of our personal narrative, we are allowed to indulge in a little fantasy that comforts us. An example of this is a story that Ian and I like to tell a lot, and if you are a close friend of us, you would know about the sushi zanmai incident. And if you hear us tell the sushi zanmai story, it sounds absolutely crazy. We'll tell you that tables were being flipped and someone splashed water on someone else and then the waiters chased us out of the restaurant. But the reality of what happened was people were just really unhappy at dinner and they were just glaring at each other. But our dramatic story is something that has bonded us and has given us something to reminisce about. It's a story that we tell our juniors, and when we tell it, they're always so excited and so happy. So even fake memories can give people real happiness, real comfort, and form real bonds with real meaning. It matters very little that these are actually fake. The way here is very simple. They're on their side of the house, they're happy for a week. But 1 week matters very little in the grand scheme of your life if you're going to live to around 70 or 80. But on our side of the house, the comfort and happiness we are able to access is infinite, where at any point in our life, if we are feeling miserable, we can close our eyes and transport ourselves back into that moment when we were younger and happier and we were having good times with our friends. And here is the thing, human beings struggle to live in the moment. In fact, we have to remind ourselves to live in the moment. Our minds always wander somewhere else because we are cursed to be creatures that ruminate. This is why all we ever talk about are old stories. This is why Naomi Ang still talks about stories from Ateneo High School even though she's in NUS now. And that speaks to the fundamental nature of the human experience, which is that we like talking about the past. Memories are important to us. We like to reminisce and we like to ruminate, and therefore this is something that gives people a lot of happiness. And here's the important thing. Whether you are able to get happy memories in your life or not is actually rather arbitrary. It's based on whether you are lucky enough to have good friends, whether you are financially well off enough to be able to afford a holiday or a good meal. And so for the vast majority of people, they lack happy memories in their life. They lack that memory that they can close their eyes and transport themselves to in order to comfort themselves. And for these people, which we're not sure who the person in the motion is, we are able to give them that memory when reality has denied it from them. They have a series of responses here. The first thing they say is that memory is not sensory. First thing I want to question is whether this is true. Because if I close my eyes right now, I can imagine the smell of my mother's cooking and I can imagine her voice in my head. But the second thing, the reason why our senses are important to us is because they activate emotion. The reason why it's important to physically see something beautiful is because it makes you feel good. So as long as we can prove that the memory makes people feel the emotion, the fact that it is not sensory matters a lot less. The next thing they say is that memory has diminishing returns. Maybe, but on their side it evaporates immediately. So even in our worst case scenario, at least we have the memory that can last us maybe 10 or 20 years. Sure, maybe we'll forget about it eventually, but that's a good runway of time for us to use this memory. On their side, immediately when the experience ends, they forget about it entirely. The best week of their life would be something that they are unable to talk to their friends about. The best thing of their life would remain something that's unknown even to them. But the last thing I want to say is that their claim was, because this is the best week of your life, everything else will be relatively not as happy in comparison. So, first response, this is not true. It is a different kind of happiness. It's a different emotional valence. So, maybe I will never feel as happy as the first time I gave a 7-minute speech, but the feeling of nostalgia when I'm speaking again is a different kind of happiness that I'm able to feel. But the second thing I want to say is that this is actually very unresponsive to Ian, because Ian explains that people are deeply unhappy now, and that we live in a world that is rife with tragedy and misery. And the unfortunate reality for most of us is that we spend this lifetime navigating an eternal journey trying to find out what makes us happy. And for many of us, it would just be so much simpler if it was revealed to us in a vision what was the thing that actually made us happy. So now at least we know what makes us happy, and so we can search for it. It might not compare, but it's still better than searching aimlessly. Yes?
Talking about memory activates humans' emotion. This can be both good and bad emotion. Talking about the best memory, remembering that the best experience has already been passed behind you makes you incredibly sad and have a hole in your life.
It's not really a hole in our lives. When Yao and I talk about the old tournaments we did, sure, there's an element of it that's bittersweet, but to characterize it as a hole in your life is rather simplistic. I'm not going to be able to describe the complexity of emotions to you, but I would like to say that on net is something that it feels good. And this brings me very nicely to the second part of the last part of my speech, which is that nostalgia is something that feels good for many people. For many of you Japanese debaters, I'm sure that you're very happy to return to ICUT, and the premise of this happiness you're feeling now is because of a prior happy memory that you're able to have. And so, the foundation of present happiness that we have is often built upon previous happy memories, and reliving a memory, being able to be in the same space and recollect things that happened many years ago. That is an important source of happiness in a world that often lacks many avenues of happiness. What is the story of our lives but a collection of memories? One more happy memory in our personal narrative is a good thing.
We thank the Deputy Prime Minister for the speech. We now call on the Deputy Leader of Opposition to continue this debate. Hear, hear.
Memory is a trap. It is a trap that chains your thoughts in a small, confined temporal space. It is a prison that shackles and overshadows your will to live. That is why we're happy to stand on opposition. I'm going to engage with the two different cases you get from PM and DPM. I'm firstly going to talk to you about how the framing from PM is completely incorrect, then I'm going to talk about happiness and the case brought to you by DPM. Firstly, PM suggests that this pill gives you the best week in your life in a very particular way, in the sense that it picks the best week you're going to experience on the counterfactual, where you do not take the pill regardless, and then chooses it, and then moves it to this particular point, where you're going to experience it, or dream of it. So, I would just point out at the very beginning, this is not how you read the instruction manual of taking a pill. It is potentially dangerous. You have to be more cautious. Don't hallucinate things that aren't there. This is a very weird interpretation and a very particular interpretation of what this pill actually does. And there are two fundamental assumptions that just do not hold. Number one, this assumes that this red pill or blue pill can insert a temporarily inconsistent experience into your life. I.e., if the counterfactual is that the best week in your life is you in old age, sitting in front of a family table, and you're young at the moment, how is this red pill going to give you that experience? Secondly, the assumption is that it can predict everything that is going to happen in your life and accurately identify the most happy moment. These are two assumptions that I think are very unlikely to hold. But the second response to this is that the blue pill or the red pill likely provides you an experience that is categorically different from your own life. That is the most secure way to ensure that this creates a sort of magnitude of happiness that is different from the other experiences in your life. Because You cannot assume that this pill has the perfect capacity to predict everything else that goes on in your life. And therefore, given an estimation of how your life is going to go, the best way to supersede that is by offering you a completely novel new experience that is unlikely to reoccur at some point. Some examples of this is just like a trip to an alien civilization. If you've seen Rick and Morty, it can be particularly interesting. So it's things like winning the lottery and spending all your money traveling the world for a week, not having any financial concerns. It's something you cannot relive. It's things like meeting a person meeting the only person you have ever loved in your life who had to leave you by the end of the week. It is things like, like an impotent person having sex for an entire week, I guess, or like someone with a disability given the magical power to walk or see again. These are things that you cannot relive. You cannot change your life to fit these experiences. So the PM case obviously doesn't stand. Now let's talk about the actual crux of the debate, which is which side makes you happier. So we have two central claims here. The first claim is that they cause an act of harm that will last forever, whereas we perhaps decrease some potential happiness that would be there, but we would say that the priority of humans experience is not creating additional, not inflicting additional pain upon themselves, rather than creating additional happiness. So, the reason why they're going to cause pain, no thank you, and this is a relatively low burden argument because we simply have to show that in many cases this is going to cause pain, is threefold. The first is happiness exists comparatively. It exists on a scale. Your experiences and your perception of your experiences is defined by your other experiences in the past because that informs how you see the world and how you perceive something to be good or bad or particularly interesting. So your present good memories are now no longer surprising, unexpected, or novel, or something you have never experienced before and are excited about when they're overshadowed by the past memory, which is by definition better and makes you happier. So you no longer have the joy of experiencing the best week in your life, or like something that's better than all your past experiences when you already know the best experience is already there. Secondly, you feel the sadness that your life is not as good as it was, that week is never going to come back again, and that your life is generally on a downhill trend. The third thing is, I think they tell you that escapism is good, but obviously there are massive harms associated with just escaping into a good memory whenever you feel problems with real life, because human beings encounter obstacles and frustrations all the time, whether it's in the process of scientific research, at a debate tournament. Just the daily tasks that you have to do are going to make you frustrated, and when your coping mechanism with everything is just falling back into that memory, drowning in that trap of memory, then you engage less with the current reality. You put less effort into actually solving issues, and it becomes a defining part of your identity that crowds out your potential to interact with new experiences and get other friends. At the point where everything you talk about is just how good this memory is, people get bored of you. Finally, and this is crucial, the most painful process is one of awakening. So at the point where you start thinking about that memory, you cannot think about it forever. At some point, you have to go back to reality. And it's that massive difference between the beauty of that hypothetical life you have lived and that reality that makes you really, really hurt. It is that comparative, massive, and drastic decline in life quality that makes you experience high degrees of pain. All that indicates that massive harms will occur on their side of the house. How do you weigh this against their harms? They make the radical claim that most people have only bad memories. So first of all, I would suggest that the majority of people in the world have the ability to appreciate small things in life. Things like the way the sunlight shines on your roof, the way you're loved by your family members or your partners, or just the agency of moving your body and being able to do what you want. I would say that there are a lot of experiences, if they're not overshadowed, they can make you potentially very happy. Secondly, as David has himself told you, you can have authentic connections with people. You can have experiences where you bond with people and feel really happy. These are all things that make you uniquely happier on our side of the house when they're not overshadowed by that one experience. Yes?
So your case basically assumes that the difference between the happiest moment of your life and the second happiest moment of your life or the next happiest is so large and it's so disappointing it'll be tragic. But in most lives, the happiest moment isn't that far from the next few happy moments. This means you can still find massive amounts of enjoyment on both sides.
Yes, the reason is, in most lives, there is not a blue pill or a red pill you can take, right? I've explained to you that the most likely mechanism upon which this blue pill or red pill operates is that it gives you a categorically different experience, because otherwise it is very difficult for it to ensure that this experience is necessarily the best week in your life. So why is this crucial? Because even if you experience pain once in a while, what you do on their side of the house is inflict additional pain on you. And because human beings are loss averse, they prioritize avoiding extra pay over potentially gaining more happiness. We think this is the most important issue in the debate. But even purely in terms of creating happiness, we tell you that the amount of happiness you can generate within that week is just categorically different from the happiness you get by recalling something from your memory, for the simple reason that it's uncertain when you experience it. It's pleasantly surprising. You experience things that you constantly not expect. Whereas if you're recalling it from memory, you know what's going to happen. Over time, it becomes more and more boring, more and more frustrating. For all of these reasons, very happy to oppose.
We thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for their speech. We now call on the Government Whip to continue this debate. Hear, hear.
Let me indulge myself in a bit of a shout out. This is not my speech, but I just wanted to shout out to Hikari Nakamura. 4 years ago, they posted that Japanese debaters deserve better, and while I have no hand to play in how the Japanese circuit has gone much better than it was before, I think it's nice to see the Japanese circuit doing well. Kotaro and Nasa being octo finalists, amongst other things, Minami being UADC elect, amongst other things. We think these things are good, and hopefully this continues. Also, we lost them 3 years ago in sevens. I had a luxury of a few wonderful trips recently in Japan, Korea, Hinon. Let's imagine that this is a fake memory, it never happened, but I remember it to be something that's good. In the darkness of my days in my life, I wonder what's the meaning of everything, of work, of life, of having to fight against the darkness. Now I know that I genuinely love traveling. I like beaches, I like the waves that come and go across. And life is therefore, in my mind, worth living in the next approximation of that trip. Maybe a debate trip, maybe Panama, hopefully I get subsidized. But anyway, my point being, I think these are approximation of memories that you can get, and we don't think it will be superseded by the best memory in your life. There's one mistake that they make in this debate, which is they never defended the red pill, meaning to say the absence of an experience, because this is an important burden that they have to take. Because the debate is, you would rather take the blue pill over the red pill and not defend against the blue pill alone. I'm going to talk about two things in my speech. The first is access, the second is decision. Let's talk about access first. I want to preface this by saying that there's a lot of darkness and bad things that happen in your life that paralyzes you. There are many days I spend my days in bed not doing anything because I find nothing actually meaningful or exciting. The only challenge on their side is that it is uncertain what wonderful memories you can get, because you can maybe imagine butterflies and sunshines to be good to begin with. But that is uncomparative to how dark your life can be. In the darkest day of your life, what you need is a very beautiful memory or something that you can look towards to therefore invigorate your life above and beyond what is the small things out there. Because we don't think the small things there can fight against the darkness, especially because it doesn't approximate to the best thing out there. We think access to the best thing in your life allows you to fight for your better memory. Me and Kevin have shared maybe 6 to 7 years of debating together, and we think we are still here. I'm 29, Oma is okay, never mind. Is there. And I think all this approximation of our memories is because we approximate to the times we learned how to debate, we enjoy the thrill of debating, we love that we performed or gave a very good speech to begin with. All this approximation, and the reason why I'm standing here is I want to chase that next high. I want to win ICUT, and these are memories that I want to remember, and the next thing I want to approximate my life is. Maybe I lose, that's fine. It's the endeavor that matters. It's how you journey across that particular motivation. But we think when their side suggests that you trivialize the memories that you get, we don't think that's the case. Because trivializing your memory requires you to therefore fight against those things to begin with. We think if you are talking about how it clouds against the dark energy that comes in your life, we think we fight this darkness a lot better when you have the beaches in your mind, when you have the next, and therefore as a result, you can take actions to get towards your dream result, for example. So right now I'm unemployed, and I think
If I am employed in the future, I can afford a trip to Panama and also therefore enjoy the next best thing or the beaches out there and all these things. These are actionable things you can make, but it's only because we have epistemic access to the best thing of our life that we can get the approximate outcome that we want. We don't think this happens under their side. We think it's much worse because they experience something under their side, and I'm going to be comparative here, but they don't remember what it is. You're going to spend your life CSIing your way through and not knowing what exactly goes on. And what's worse is that they are uncomparative to what we said earlier, which is you don't know what you want, you find yourself in the labyrinth of your journey of life, not knowing what exactly it is you want, and many people often spend decades or years to figure out what exactly want, only to realize it's too late. I'm 29 and I have no university career left in me, but I still want to do my major. And we think all these things is important in your approximation to that particular experience to begin with. All these things means that their side doesn't get this. How does this manifest? What we would imagine this to manifest is an example of a memory carousel. So what we think memory carousel looks like is you have a series of approximate best experience. You got the best experience there. You don't know which one are false experiences. But how do we get to this memory carousel? We get to this memory carousel because we endeavor each time in our darkest days to get to that memory carousel, to get to the next best memory to begin with. And in that, maybe you get like a 70% approximation of the best memory. We think that is still good. That allows you to better get the kind of happiness that you want. So if their side says we get happiness through sunshine, we get it better because we acknowledge that sunshine is the next best thing out there. Their side doesn't actually prove that, and we think it within the access to these things reinvigorates us, allows us to challenge for next best thing, allows us to endeavor for our better side. But before that, any POI? No? Okay, got it. So anyway, the next question I really want to ask is about decision. Because what we want to say here is that if you wrongly believe that your family is starting up a family is the best thing in your life, what happens when you start a family is that you can never reverse it. Therefore, as a result, what we want to have is to create an outcome that is most approximate to the kinds of happiness that you want. Irreversibly, many mothers often start families thinking that that's something that they will really want, only to realize that the burden of having a child is so oppressive to the point where they sacrifice too many things and not be able to get any access to the happiness that they want. We think all these things create the hurt and create the harm that they can never reverse out there. And because there's only one life out there, and we think those things are bad, their side suggests a few things. What if this pill suddenly transports you to alien life or makes you think that you're only happy in your old age? We think that's still a good thing for a few reasons. Number one, maybe the alien life was really fun adventure and you can never access it. Maybe in 10 years or 50 years down the line, you can ask SpaceX, call SpaceX and say maybe I want to go to space. Maybe that's a good endeavor to have. But secondly, in the instance where it's an old age situation, we think that's still a good thing. The reason why is because you can endeavor to realize that actually the dust will eventually settle in your life. That while you are depressed now, that somehow in the future you will be happy. And that's what solace and comfort you can get from accessing the memory. So if their side suggests that decision making is going to be worse under their side, we disagree. And the reason why is because those experiences unlock and supercharges and reinvigorates what comes out for you. Therefore, as a result, we think those things, or the memories of your happiest lives, are incredibly important, and I think it supercharges and motivates you to a large extent. Proud to propose.
We thank the government whip for their speech. We now call on the opposition whip to continue this debate. Hear, hear.
Hello. Okay, I didn't really think of any shout out in particular, but shout out to Ren and Ricky for coming all the way from China to Japan. Also, I really want to thank Minami, Rose, and the rest of the OCOM, and also the CAP as well, for holding this international tournament. It's very rare that in Japan we have such international tournament on this scale, and I'm very happy to see many participants all around the world coming to this tournament and enjoying. Thank you. I'm going to talk about two things. First, what does it mean for humans to chase your happiness? Second, I'm going to talk about happiness. First, on chasing your happiness. The proposition's main claim in this debate is that there are time constraints to find what makes you most happy, and you can pursue the happiness better when you know exactly what it is. I'll start with a boring response to the interesting response. First, definitionally, you cannot do this by perverting your emotion, because it says you have the best week of your life, which means that after knowing the memory, any actions that you take, you cannot replicate the best experience, or you cannot surpass the best experience. Because if you can surpass the best experience, by definition, it's not going to be the best. Alright? Secondly, so that's why this is very important, because no matter how hard you work, no matter how, like, so let's say your dream was like to win a debate, and then like, no matter how hard you try, you can't replicate that degree of happiness. You can't replicate the exact same experience. So you feel a sense of helplessness and hopelessness that no matter how hard you try, you cannot engage and you cannot achieve that. Secondly, I think the proposition team assumes that you can actually replicate the similar experience to the one that you watch. We already rebutted from this. A lot of the times, like even not alien life, but also things like having good memory with your good friends or family or feeling validated, let's say that was the memory, it's just very difficult to replicate because other people's actions are something that is out of your control. It's very difficult to do that, and they assume they can, obviously not. Thirdly, let's assume that they can. Let's assume propositions, all their mechanisms and all their assumptions. The process of aiming for the goal in itself becomes more struggling and mentally traumatizing for you. Why? So let's assume that you see the dream of like winning worlds this year, and then like that's the biggest dream that you have, right? And boy David surely knows that winning it is the best thing. Like he has a certainty that this is the best goal of your life. But this is very unfortunate and tragedy because every time you do a spar, every time you join a competition and lose a round, you feel a crippling sense of threat that you might not actually be able to replicate that experience. You know that the best thing in your life, the best dream that you have, the best experience and the purpose of your life is this, but you might not be able to achieve it anytime soon. That fear and that sense of threat is incredibly mentally damaging for the vast majority of people. By contrast, on our side, not knowing about what makes you happy is incredibly good because it means that when you try, let's say when you try debating and you fail, you can rationalize this. You can say that actually I can try to do other hobbies. I can try to be happy in any other ways. That is a way in which humans often rationalize. Most people all around the world fail at what they do. Like by definition, a lot of the things that people desire are zero sum, and it's very rare that someone actually achieves this, which means that on our side of the house, providing this rationalization mechanism, not knowing about what makes you the happiest is an incredible benefit and blessing for humanity. Fourthly, note that not knowing about what makes you happy in itself is important. Because what kind of sad person knows exactly what makes you happiest, know exactly what the purpose of your life and the end goal of your life is? This is such a sad and pathetic life. Life is full of search of experiences. It is an exploration. You meet new people. You go to different countries. You gain new experiences. You form different communities. And this is the way in which you find new interests, find small things, happiness in your life. These are experiences that you strip away of on their side of the house when you give this memory and knowledge of what makes you the happiest and what the purpose of your life looks like. This is a tragedy on their side, which means a lot of the impacts that they claim is actually a bad thing. Second thing I want to talk about is happiness. The first thing I want to talk about is this idea from proposition that if you forget about a memory, like if you forget about this best experience, it doesn't matter. Firstly, I want to be very clear. The time frame of respect, it's boring, but time frame of respect is that you decide right now, whether or not, a week later, you want to experience this super luxurious, incredible experience in Bahana somewhere, or you choose to implant memory. Which means that right now, the time frame is basically that you are going to actually experience this in the future. So this is a real happiness that is the most certain impact that gets unresponded to from their side. Secondly, I would point out, even if you eventually forget about it, a lot of these real instances matter to you. Even if I don't remember how my mother raised me in the past, how my mother cherished me in the past, these real things are actually something that I appreciate and I actually cherish and valuable to human beings. The idea that just because you forget about it, it's not important, is a flimsy mechanism that doesn't fly in this debate. The reason why this is important is firstly, boring debate, but this is the most certain impact in the debate. But secondly, we explained from Ray, we touched upon this, that people have revealed preference for truth. Which is that, for instance, when you know that your girlfriend is cheating on you, but then she lies about you, or she hides from you and you don't actually know, like there's no utilitarian harm, but there's something wrong with it. Like there's something wrong with it that of being deceived to and not knowing the truth. People want to know the truth, people want to explore the truth, and that is a certain benefit that we actually achieve. The second thing I want to talk about is to DPM's main analysis that remembering and revisiting memory in itself gives you happiness in real life. There are a couple of responses to this. The first thing I want to be very clear is that the proposition throughout this debate underestimates the human capacity to actually be happy, to cope with failure, to cope with a lot of depression and struggles in life. For that, I'll take it away.
So, your rebuttal assumes that we have to exactly one-to-one replicate happiness in order to get our benefits. Our burden was much lower than that. All we're saying is you realize the category of thing that makes you happy and consistently makes the average happiness of your life increase as you pursue things more approximate to that.
Like your argument was that you're going to chase the best memory. Like you're going to try to replicate that. That's like the easy path, right, that you described. Alright, I think it's also important that a lot of the happy memories activate bad emotions more often than not. When you go to a fun trip in Japan and then fly back to your country, you go to your room and look at the ceiling alone, you would realize a sense of sadness. You would feel a sense of hole in your heart that best things have already passed behind you. And this is incredibly important because this is not just like a fun trip in Japan, but this is the best experience that you will ever receive in life. So the magnitude of the hollowness, the sadness that you're going to feel is going to be incredibly immense on their side. But we also explain, because this is going to be the benchmark that you have against other things that you're going to encounter in your life, you will perpetually be unhappy. The claim from government is that you will rationalize this as the next big thing, like next best thing. I can be happy if I wish humans are as rational as what they say, but the reality is you can't. You can't just simply justify your feeling and say, this is the next best thing, I can live with it. You can't. For these reasons, proud to stand on opposition.
We thank the opposition whip for their speech. Now we call on the opposition reply. That was the wrong slide. The opposition reply. Continue this debate. Here.
Happiness is relative, and you all know this. Most days I am happy with my school life. I go to class, finish my math assignments, jog on campus, read novels, watch John Oliver and sometimes Luigi on YouTube. Some days I'm profoundly unhappy. For instance, when I head back from our run in Malaysia ABP and nobody in my school knows what Malaysia ABP is, I think about Kataro forcing me to drink and feel really sad that I didn't drink more. I know I will be unhappy again when I head back to Beijing from Tokyo, when I think about the cheap sushi, the expensive sushi, the beef, the ramen, and when I think about Kataro, who keeps roasting me and saying my deputy speeches are worse than my snoring. Back to the debate. I think it is quite clear that opposition is going to win. So the first thing I want to talk about is that in terms of the red pill, the reason why we didn't focus on the red pill is because proposition has been unable throughout the debate to prove any harm you can possibly get from taking the red pill. It's just 1 week of excitement, 1 week of unexpected joy, 1 week of the most fun you can have on this planet, so no harm associated with that because you won't live with the consequences, you won't remember any of this. So if you vote for our side, you're basically taking a drug that cannot damage you in any possible way. But what is the problem with the blue pill? The harm is very obvious. This beautiful experience is going to trap you and overshadow everything else in your life. And that is going to cause immense pain. And the most important manifestation of this is that you will feel sad when you have just gone through something beautiful and now it is gone. When you sit in your room, when you go on with your daily life, you feel sad about it. You feel sad about the massive contrast between the beauty and the happiness you have experienced in that short period of time, and you're sad. It is so temporary and ephemeral, and you're sad your current life cannot match that level of happiness. So the harm is quite obvious. This will cause lots of pain, and especially in moments where you're lonely, in moments where you feel like your life doesn't mean anything, you will drown in these memories, and that cannot be good for you. It makes you unhappy, but even if it makes you happy, you simply are neglecting the other things you need to do in your life to get out of things like depression. depression. Because when you lie on bed all day and you think about the beautiful memory you once had in the past, that doesn't change anything. That doesn't help you get up from bed and start being productive and start walking out of the shadow. That only makes you drown even further and not want to do anything else with your life. That is the harm we have proven to you very clearly throughout the bench. What is the benefit then of taking the blue pill? So government pushed two things. The first is that this guides you through life and approximates happiness. Second is that this gives you solace in times of darkness. The first observation I would make is that this is a strategic error because these two things are in tension. If it is the case that it's not categorically different from other experiences in your life, and if it is the case that your life is generally really, really bad, then this experience is not going to be good either. It's not going to be good enough to provide you solace in times of darkness. If you're a really poor person who's just structurally unable to access sort of any source of wealth, then if it is their definition, this memory will not be good. It will not give you solace in times of darkness. But the response to all of this is very clear down the bench. It is that you can appreciate the small things in your life, the experiences you have with your friends. And as per the Gov framing, that this is not categorically different from the other experiences in your life, and that memory is often arbitrary and you can construct these things, I would say this is entirely symmetric, because as David has beautifully painted in his TPM, we have beautiful memories in our life. But the only difference is that it is not the single best memory in your life that's going to overshadow everything else. So our point is, this does not have a significant distinction with the other coping mechanisms that you have, with the other experiences that might last just a week or a day, but still give you solace in life. This is not a unique benefit, whereas the harm is real. For the purpose of caution, we advise you not to take this pill. Very happy to oppose.
We thank the opposition reply for their speech, and now we call on the government reply to close this debate. Hear, hear.
Hello. Okay, since everyone did shout-outs, I will do one in my reply. I would like to shout out to my beautiful girlfriend Leah who will watch this recording later. I love you very much. What is the best week of your life and how happy are you right now? These are questions that are unknowable to us because happiness does not have a numerical quantity that we can measure. We do not know whether the current week we are having is more or less happy than the supposed best week of our life. And that's why a lot of their argumentation falls short. Because people are not able to reflect in that way when they're comparing their memories. They're not able to say, I was definitely happier in this week compared to my second best week of my life. And if that is true, a lot of their harms will accrue. Their case was that a happy memory makes subsequent experiences pale in comparison. It is unclear if this is true intuitively. Just because I ate pepperoni on Saturday and it was the best meal of my life does not mean I did not enjoy Ichiban ramen this morning. But this is also incredibly unnuanced. Future experiences might not make you as happy, but the emotional valence is now different. It is now nostalgia, it is now reliving the past. Sure, it's not the same happiness, the hedonistic pleasure of the best week of your life. It's a different kind of happiness, a kind of happiness that feels a bit bittersweet. It is unclear that future experiences are that far off that you'll be dissatisfied in a significant way. Maybe you would never relive the best week of your life, but the second best week of your life might come pretty close. Their focus then was, people will fear they can never replicate the best week of their life. But this was unresponsive to the material in Yao Kun, where he explains that on their side, people are afraid that they will never be happy, and they will wonder if there will ever be a best week of their life, or if they will ever find what's happiness to them. There is no optimism on their side of the house, because people become jaded that happiness maybe is not in this universe for them. At least we know that we were happy once before. At least we know that once upon a time, I was not this sad individual and that I had a happy week. Being happy once does not leave a hole in your heart. This is a sad outlook on human existence. This is an argument to avoid ever finding the best week of your life. But what is human life and existence if all we do is avoid being happy because we are afraid we will never be happy again? Will we all just sit in our rooms and deny ourselves happiness? That sounds like self-sabotage. It's okay to be happy once and never be happy again, because at least once we had the best week of our lives. Their case was reliant on the memory being something crazy, like visiting an alien civilization. We explained that the pill probably needs to have some continuity with your life, or else you will have massive cognitive dissonance. They can't expect us to defend remembering going to an alien civilization and then becoming conspiracy theorists because no one believes that you saw an alien civilization. But their responses here actually missed the mark. They say things like escapism is bad. They say things like your future experiences won't be as good. But these are arguments about rumination and memory. People will still escape on their side, but they escape with imperfect memories. People will still compare on their side, and they'll still be dissatisfied on their side, because on their side, people also have had good weeks in the past. So all of those harms are symmetric, but at least what we are comparing to actually is something that is a lot more enriching and satisfying. So none of the harms of comparison, none of the harms of escapism are things that don't exist on their side as well. Those criticisms were quite futile. But here's the strategic mistake that they made. They did not defend the red pill. And this means that we do not need to prove that this memory makes us immensely happy. We don't need to prove that people will be incredibly enriched or incredibly comforted. We just need to prove that it makes us happier than if we took the red pill. And even if happy memories don't make people happy, but instead make them feel bittersweet, this weird mix of happiness and emptiness, this is still comfort, meaning, and emotion. Even if nostalgia wasn't happiness and it was a kind of weird emptiness, it made us feel something. And that is better than a red pill that actually mattered very little in the grand scheme of your life. 1 week in the grand story of 70 years of your life is cosmically insignificant. This was ultimately better than nothing, than a pill on their side that remained irrelevant. Even if nostalgia was not happiness, at least we had a well of infinite and reusable source of comfort, source of meaning, and stories we can tell people. After this debate, regardless of outcome, I'm sure I'm going to hear Yao Kun and Jay talk about stories from 2016 and 2015, and wouldn't it be wonderful if they had one more story to tell all of us?
We thank the Gov Reply for their speech, and we thank everyone for a wonderful debate. Please cross the house. Thank you.